This evening we're going to take a very important journey, and we're going to go through what I consider to be 5 incredible principles which will really line us up towards the end of this whole program. And I guess really what we're discussing tonight is a word which is one of the buzzwords, spirituality. Everyone loves that word. No one likes religion anymore. Religion's out. That's so 90s, you know. But spirituality is in. But we're going to do it in a slightly different way. We're going to come at it from a different direction, which I consider to be the real Jewish direction. And we're going to talk about pleasure. Pleasure. And we're going to look at 5 different levels of pleasure together. And we're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to make our way up. And it just reminds me, by the way, I received an email this morning, which I'm very excited about. And I didn't want to make it so public so quickly, but I had an email sent to my email list this morning that I, Rabbi Lawrence, won $5 million. What? Why are you laughing? It was written out to me. Rabbi Lawrence had my address. I could just send a check to some guy in Africa. I don't know where it was, Uganda or something. I don't know where it was. And they would send me my money, a processing fee. You're laughing? Come on, Rabbi. We all get those silly emails. Why is that so ridiculous? Because we know when it comes to pleasure, things don't just get handed to us. We have to work at what we achieve. Right? It doesn't just come to us. And it's going to be the same in spirituality and life in general. And we're going to see that we're going to define the idea of pleasure into 5 categories. And these 5 categories are very much like flying. What's the best way to fly? On an airplane is a good start, yes. Using your hands probably wouldn't work. But if you're on an airplane, what's the best way to fly? First class, right. Come on. Although nowadays, by the way, probably private jet. But first class, you get a bed. You get real knives and forks. You get a person, a steward, stewardess, taking care of all of your wants and your needs. If you fly El Al, when they hit you, there's an open hand rather than a fist. It's such a much more enjoyable experience. What comes after first class? Business class. Well, actually, it's second class, but who wants to be a second class flyer? So give a nice name, they call it business class or ambassador travel, executive travel, but it's actually second class. After that comes exit seats. Coach. Coach. Third class, but you can't call it third class, right? And that's where most of us are squeezed in together, barely able to squeeze ourselves in those little tiny seats, right? After that comes steerage, exactly, where they put all the animals, the goats and the cows and the dogs and the cats and the luggage. And after that, they give you a rope and they wrap it around the tail of the plane and they say, hold on. And most people go through life just barely holding on. There was a book in the 1980s called Final Exit. And this book was a New York Times bestseller. Sold hundreds of thousands of copies within the first few weeks of being published and many, many more after that. And this book taught you how to commit suicide in the comfort of your own home. Isn't that sad? All these people, I don't think all these people kill themselves, but they want to at least have the book. That if they need to actually kill themselves, they know how to do it in a nice, comfortable way, sitting at home. And it was a bestseller. Most people go through life barely hanging onto the rope. And in Judaism, we're going to see that you really want to go through life. I mean, we're all going through life anyway, to get the most out of it. And Judaism, what I want to show you is the whole point, and this is the punchline, so listen carefully, of being alive is to gather as much pleasure as possible. It's a big statement. But that's the whole point of existence. Actually, when the Torah begins, we see the story of Adam and the story of Eve. And in that story, we see they're in a garden. And what is the first command that is given to Adam and Eve? Anyone know? Yes?
Like, go and enjoy all this.
Exactly. Many people think it's don't eat from that tree. Actually, they're told to eat everything. This whole delicious, beautiful garden. is yours to eat and enjoy. But they couldn't handle that because there was one thing they couldn't take, and that's the one thing they wanted. That's another problem we'll leave at aside. But the first command is to enjoy this world. And that command is given to us. One of the problems is, however, that we take all of our pleasures and we lump them together into one mush, into one fat mush. And we put all our pleasures into one basket, and really we can massage them and separate them out. And by doing so, we're going to learn a vast amount. So today's program is we're going to go through those 5 different levels together. And hopefully that will reveal a lot to us about Judaism, a lot to us about the idea of mitzvah, which is our topic, obviously, and steer us in the right direction. Along the way, we are going to take a slight detour. And as you say here in America, we're going to visit left field. Luke, but that's a baseball analogy in case you knew that. Right, we're going to go to left field, we're going to do something in left field, and then we're going to come back, okay? That journey is not so related to today's discussion, but it is very important in terms of understanding the L's that we spoke about last class. Remember the language and the law and the land and the love and the life. So that's really going to be our discussion. Are we all ready for this journey together? Should we start at the bottom, level 5, the basic level? So what would you say is the basic pleasure that we experience in this world? What is the most basic pleasure? Give me some examples. What's that?
Eating.
Eating. Who doesn't like to eat? We Jews, we love it. Oh, yes. Very, very good. Eating is all about us. By the way, what's the holiest day in the Jewish calendar? So some people say Rosh Hashanah, and some people say Yom Kippur. That is actually incorrect. The holiest day in the Jewish calendar actually is Shabbat. I'm being very serious. And what do we do on Shabbat? We eat. Actually, it's 52 times more holy than Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is important, but unfortunately, in the Jewish world, they've overdone the Yom Kippur card. They've actually begun to define Judaism by Yom Kippur. If I had my way, I would ban Yom Kippur. I really would. I'd get a little pin with YK with a red line going through it, and walk around, It's Union Square, it's right around the corner. Who doesn't protest about something, save the dinosaur, whatever that is? So you know what? I want to get rid of Yom Kippur. Why? Because unfortunately, that has begun to represent Judaism for so many people. And they grow up, and the only time they go to synagogue is Yom Kippur. So for them, Judaism is a fast. Listen very carefully, my Jewish brothers and sisters. There are 6 fast days in the Jewish calendar. There are 80 feasting days. Do you think we're fasters or eaters? Exactly. Eating is who we are. That's how we celebrate. We bring family and friends together. And we take this physical pleasure called eating and we elevate it. We bring it up. We like it. So Shabbat is the holiest day. It is the holy of holies. Yom Kippur is only Yom Kippur. By the way, I'm only joking about canceling Yom Kippur. I don't want to get kicked out of the rabbinate, right, again. So, I'm only kidding. So we don't want to mess. However, Shabbat is what it's all about. And we eat, as we're going to see, we do a whole class just on Shabbat in a couple of weeks. And what do we do on Shabbat? We eat 3 meals, we're going to say, with fish and meat, and we sing and we dance, and we're very, very physical in all of our activities. That's the highest a person can go. So that's eating. What else do we do? We drink. Yeah, thank you so much. Yes. We drink as well. Some other physical pleasures? Thank you so much for the offer. Right, we're physical. Right. Look at the other religions, how they see these things. Right, the highest level you can reach, the Pope. He's celibate. There's no wife. Right? The nuns, they're married to God. And then he comes to see the rabbi. He's here with his 15 children. Like, what's going on? It's the exact opposite. It's taking the physical, taking the physicality and lifting it up, taking it higher, using it for the right purposes. Now you're going to have to ask yourself, when am I physical? Why am I physical? Where and with whom? And once we answer those questions correctly to ourselves and to our Jewish standards, then we can have a spiritual lifestyle. So physicality for us is not seen as a terrible thing. It's not seen as a sinful activity. It's questionable how and where. Well, once we answer those questions, we take the physical, we lift it up. Therefore, Shabbat becomes the holiest day. Yom Kippur is important, but it's not as good. You know, interesting thing, you'll hear this later on in one of the classes when we discuss Jewish holidays. Yom Kippur is actually made up of different words. Yom means day. K, as a prefix, as we'll learn, is like. And Pur is a reference to Purim. Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is like Purim, but not as good, say the Kabbalists. Purim. Bring the Jews to Purim. Bring them to Simchat Torah, if they knew what it was, right? Or to Shavuot. You may see them again the rest of the year. Bring them to Yom Kippur. Are we surprised that about why Yom Kippur has actually become the day is a different discussion off now. It's a very important day. It's their forgiveness, as you'll learn, God willing, in a few weeks. But having said that, it's not who we are as a people. That is not who we are as a people. Okay, so we have examined the lowest pleasure, physical. We've got 4 more to go. Before we do, I want to do a slight detour for just a moment and give you a few rules that are going to apply to every single one of the levels of pleasure, okay, that we're going to discuss. Number 1, watch out for counterfeits. Every pleasure that we're going to look at has a counterfeit. What's a counterfeit? It's a phony. It looks real, it smells real, it tastes real, but it's not real. Why God created the world with this phony pleasure hanging around is another question. It's to do with the discussion on free will. In order to have free will, as we say in Hebrew, bechira, we need to have choices, and those choices have to equal and mimic each other. But they're not real, remember. They look it, they taste it, but they are not real. So we're going to see that's going to apply to every level. Well, let's try that one right now, actually. We talk about physical level. What's the counterfeit of physical pleasure? A phony. Remember, it looks like it, smells like it, tastes like it, but it is not it. Taking drugs. Is that a physical pleasure? Yeah, I wouldn't know. However, they do say yes, I do know, right? Taking drugs is enjoyable. Don't tell your children, don't take drugs. Why? They don't taste good. They're fantastic. What you tell them is we don't do it because what goes up must come down. It's called gravity. It works with drugs as well. So drugs, whatever form or shape they take, will have the same problem. Right? They are phony physical pleasures. We've got to find a more authentic, real way to feel physical pleasures. And they're there. God will not create us with a desire for physical pleasures without allowing us to manifest it. In Judaism, we are allowed to enjoy all of our physicality. It's just deciding when. Drugs are not the way to go. When I was a kid, I'm older than most of you by at least 6 months. However, one thing we had with growing up, we did the Just Say No campaign. You know, Just Say No? And then Nancy Reagan jumped on board. Remember that? Ronald Reagan's wife, she didn't create it, but she jumped on board. And this campaign that they had back in the 80s was a terrible, terrible flop. Complete failure. Why? Because you would say to kids, just say no, and the kids would say, why should I? I have no alternative. My life stinks. My parents stink. School stinks. So they took drugs. By the way, what's the modern day campaign, which the government has spent millions, if not billions of dollars on? And it's actually a very, very good campaign, and supposedly it is helping. Very good. Parents. The anti-drug is actually the campaign. And it's actually, we'll look up online. What's the idea of the anti-drug for the parents? The idea is don't talk to the kids. They don't know. You as a parent should tell your kids. Now the focus in their efforts to speak to parents and tell the parents to not allow the kids to take drugs. And parents are like, but we took drugs, man. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, man. They're like, get over it. You can still, they say this in the commercials, you can still tell your kids to say no to drugs. Have you heard the commercials? The commercials actually are brilliant. Right? Don't take drugs. Don't take drugs. Like, is that the way to teach kids? You know, like with a jingle? Talk to your children, right? Discuss it with them. Speak to them about it. So that's number 1. Counterfeits, watch out for them. More about that as we move up the physical pleasure ladder. Number 2, keep your eye on the ball. You ever see those kids playing basketball? They're bouncing around. This is not the next pleasure. This is one of the caveats. You see those kids playing basketball? Imagine I go up to them and like, hey kids, you're not there in Brooklyn or in Manhattan. They're like playing for hours and hours. I'm like, throw me the ball. Throw me the ball. I'm like, carry on playing. What, without a ball? Yeah, without a ball. And they carry on playing. They're like, this is boring. Give me the ball back. I'm like, why? You're doing the same movements you were before. You're still doing this, and you're still doing that. And they'll say, because it's no fun. Why? Because you've got to keep your eye on the ball. See? You see, it's only enjoyable if I'm receiving some benefit from doing it. In other words, let me put it like this. What's the opposite of pain? No. The opposite of pain is not pleasure. The opposite of pain is no pain, exactly. Something can be painful and pleasurable. These kids are playing, they're schwitzing and they're hurting. It's painful. If you look at them objectively, like, wow, they're in so much pain, banging each other, knocking each other, but they're having tremendous pleasure. Pleasure and pain are not mutually exclusive. They can be combined into one unit. That's what those children are teaching us. That's when you go to the gym, and those people are grunting away, or they're running the marathons, they look like they're extreme pain. They're enjoying it. They're getting a pleasure out of doing that thing, whatever it is. Yeah? So too, when we talk pleasure, we're not talking about, I'm having a great time, this is something fantastic. It can be effort, but it is giving me pleasure. Yeah? Grunting and sweating and heaving, that can be pleasurable. Working hard in the gym, right? No, those ladies in the gym, like on the treadmill 1 mile an hour. You're like, Mrs. Cohen, do you really think you're exercising right now? I want to like ramp it up and, doing the 1 pound weights. I'm like, no. In order to build muscle, there has to be resistance. In order to have a cardio workout, there has to be resistance. In order to be physical pleasure and improvement, there must be resistance. That doesn't make it unpleasurable. It can make it painful, but if you have the right perspective, it can become a pleasure. It's just a matter of attitude. Are we good? So watch out for counterfeits and keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. And lastly, become an expert. I've done many trips to Israel. I led 20 trips to Israel. And one of the things we used to do was take people to wineries. Now, have you ever been to a winery or met an expert in wine? It's a wonderful experience. They give you the glass, and you want to drink it, and they're like, no. First of all, you've got to look at it. I'm like, looks like wine. And you've got to move it around the glass and smell it. I'm like, smells like wine. You've got to tilt it, and then tilt it back, because it leaves lines on the side of the glass, shows the side of the glass, what they call long legs in the industry. And it shows it's got good acidity or alkaline, whatever it is. It's a good sign. Then you put it in your mouth. You don't swallow it. What do? You oxygenate it. And you move it around the different parts of the tongue. And then you're meant to spit it out. I don't do that, right? But that's what you're meant to do. What is that experience meant to be teaching you? That there's different levels of pleasure over here. She drinks wine. I drink wine. Two different experiences. For me, tastes good, straight down. I like red. A dry red, if you're interested, by the way. This lady, however, she finds a whole different experience. For her, there's aromas, there's subtleties, there's tastes of blueberry and blackberry, what else? I don't know what put blackberries in wine, but that's the idea. You can taste the different nuances. Become an expert. And we Jews, you may have realized, over 3,500 years of Jewish history, have put a lot of effort into becoming experts in everything. It's a very Jewish trait, and other nations have noted this about us. Many of them in derogatory fashions, calling us donkeys with books on our backs. Not a pleasant way to describe us, but pretty accurate, by the way. We're slow-moving and we learn a lot. It's part of our culture, our history, our psychology, everything about us. Okay, let's go back. Before I carry on, I have a question. This is a great question, by the way. Very difficult. I love asking this question because it's such a difficult question. But if you hear the answer, it can change the way you look at the world, or help you see the world through Jewish eyes. What makes pleasure pleasurable? Is that a fair question? What makes pleasure pleasurable? We're all seeking pleasure. That's really, in other words, if you want to know what humanity is, we are pleasure seekers. People are willing to work in jobs they hate for 15 weeks a year just so they can have a 2-week pleasurable vacation at the end. Right? The clothes we wear, the food we eat, the art we look at, the music we listen to, why I listen to it, it gives me pleasure. What makes pleasure pleasurable? It's a fair question, considering we're spending most of our lives chasing it. We want our relationships to be pleasurable. I've never met someone who wanted a miserable relationship. I mean, we've all been in miserable relationships, but that wasn't our goal, was it? So what exactly makes a pleasure pleasurable?
The individual.
What about the individual?
Like what you were saying earlier, you run a marathon, people are in a lot of pain, but it's pleasurable.
Very, very good. But what makes that marathon pleasurable for the person?
Perception.
But what's the perception?
Accomplishment.
Not always. Sometimes I feel unaccomplished when I do something. Sometimes I feel as though I'm doing something. I bite into a pizza. First bite, great. Fifth bite, but the 15th, what's the accomplishment? I finished the pie. So what really makes the first bite pleasurable and the 15th not so much?
Reward center.
Anticipation.
I can anticipate it. Sometimes I'm not anticipating it. It just happens like that, and wow, that was pleasurable. Or I anticipate it, and it's not so pleasurable. But you're all right, by the way. I'm just helping us think a little bit. Is there someone else over here? Sorry. Anyone else over here? Difficult question, right? I'll give you the answer. It's an incredible answer. You must hear this incredible thought process. What makes a pleasure pleasurable is harmony. Let me explain what I mean. What makes that pizza, so who doesn't like pizza? Delicious. You can melt cheese on anything, it tastes good. What makes the pizza so pleasurable? Just the right amount of cheese, to the right amount of dough, and the sauce has just the right amount of tomatoes, to the right amount of pepper and salt. Now, your level of pleasure is different to mine, because you like more cheese, and I like more crispy dough. That's fine. But for you, we've harmonized the ingredients perfectly to create a pleasure. What makes the music so good? The right amount of drum, to the right amount of guitar, to the right amount of bass, to the right amount of singing and harmony, and it comes together and it sounds so good. Now your level is different to mine, because you like heavy rock, I see, you like thrashing it out, and I like, more subtle music, you see, like that, and you like thrash, and like rah, rah, rah. I listen to it, I'm like, do they enjoy that? What is the enjoyment in rah, 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 rah? But for them, in their teens, they're like, wow, that's just so amazing, For them, it makes harmony. That could be a problem, by the way. That's another question, right? But for them, that becomes harmony for them. Art. What makes the art so good? The right amount of greens, the right amount of blues, the right amount of yellows. It all harmonizes together. So it's the food, the buildings we look at, the relationships. We're looking for harmony in our relationships. So we're not pleasure seekers. We are harmony seekers. That's really the essence of who we are, say the rabbis. By the way, I missed something out very important. This discussion we're having isn't my idea in any way, shape, or form. It comes originally from a book called the Sefer HaChinuch, the Book of Education. And this book was written, we don't know by whom, usually we do, but we know when roughly, and we know why, most importantly. It was written in the 1200s, and it was written by a rabbi who was very brilliant. He had a son who was about to come bar mitzvah. And his son kept asking questions. But why do I have to eat matzah on Passover? Right? Why can't I get angry? Why do I have to give tzedakah charity? And his father said, enough of that. I'm going to write down all the reasons for all the mitzvah, 613, remember? And I'll give you a root reason for every one of them. It's a very big thing to do. And he wrote this book, and this book has become a classic. It's available in English as well. And he goes through every one of the 630 mitzvot, giving the root reason why we keep kosher, why we have to, it's an unusual one, by the way, very hard to do, and why we have to give charity, why we eat matzah on Pesach, why we have to fast on Yom Kippur, why we celebrate with the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And he gives the full reason. Somewhere sneaked over there, he talks to this idea of pleasure. I'm not going to tell you right now where, but later on we're going to look inside the Chumash, and I'm going to show you where he derives this idea of pleasure from. It's a very interesting mitzvah he derives it from, one of the most important mitzvot of the Torah, and we're going to look at it inside. Okay, so now we know our three caveats. We know why, things we have to watch out for. We know the idea of pleasure is really harmony seeking. And now we are going to go to our next level. So what comes after pleasure that is physical? What's number 4? What's number 4? Give me another pleasure. Emotional, okay. What kind of emotion? Says the Chinuch, it's actually love. Love. Who isn't looking for love? Don't confuse it with physical pleasure. It may manifest itself physically at times, but it is not, in essence, a physical pleasure. It is something much, much higher and holier than that. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to try to define to you the Jewish idea of love. That's a big thing to say, isn't it? Wow. All these people singing about love, 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 and people are advertising in their hearts everywhere, and everyone loves each other. I love him, she loves me, and everyone loves each other. And then you realize maybe they don't love me so much. After a couple of years, now your heart's been destroyed. And sound familiar? Probably. So what we're going to do is I'm going to define for you, this is not my definition, by the way, this is the classic, simple definition of what love is. Because everyone is looking for love, aren't we? Who isn't looking for love in their life? And maybe you think you may have found it. And maybe you have. And then again, maybe you haven't. Maybe you have a counterfeit that feels like it, smells like it, tastes like it, but isn't it. How are we going to know unless we define what it is? To discover what love is, we're going to do something very unusual. We're going to go to left field. The left field we spoke about before, we're going there now. We're going to spend 10 or so minutes in left field having a very important discussion, and then we're going to come back and we're going to discuss this idea of love. Okay? Very good. So what do I want to go to left field to discuss? Something we mentioned last week, and that is one of the 5 L's we spoke about last week, and that is language. Language. What is the Jewish language? Hebrew is the Jewish language. Now I wanted to open up your Chamashim, if you don't mind, your Torahs. And you're going to turn to the first page. Actually, it's really numbered page 2. You have to go in about all the credits in the beginning. About 15 pages in, it's the first real Hebrew page. And it says, Parashas Bereshis. Can everyone see that? Parashas Bereshis. Yep. Everyone there? It's the first block of Hebrew. Very, very good. So let's have a look, because I want to show you how studying Torah, studying the Chumash in Hebrew, is completely different to studying it in English. There is really no comparison. The English just gives us a very two-dimensional interpretation of what the Hebrew is really doing. I'm going to prove that to you. Look at the first verse in the Torah, in the English. In the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth. Now, if I were a Christian, which I'm not, by the way, I'm Jewish, but if I were a Christian, I would look at that verse and I would say like, I see in my Bible that the Lord, God, He created the heavens and the earth. Is that correct? Yeah, that's true. So I've established some very important things. There was a beginning, which pretty much everyone agrees to now. Right? Things started. Right? At some point there was a pejorative Big Bang. Right? That's actually a pejorative term. Right? But it started. And there's a God. And that God, in the beginning, created heavens and earth. And that's it. What else can I get out of that? That's it. I have one verse, and that's all it's revealing to me. But if I look in the Hebrew, I'm going to see something unbelievable. I'm not only going to see what happened and who did it, I'm actually going to learn how it was done. So look at the Hebrew if you don't mind. I know most of you don't read Hebrew yet, but you may be able to follow anyway. It says, Bereshit bara, in the beginning of God's creating, Elohim, one of the names of God, et hashemayim ve'et haaretz, of the heavens and the earth. Now in the Hebrew, there's an extra word which doesn't need to be there in order to make the pasuk, the verse, work. It would work without that word. And the word is et. It's a particle. It has no meaning. Made up of 2 letters, aleph and taf. What's aleph? Last week we discussed it. It's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. What's taf? Taf is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Say the Kabbalists, the Baal Shem Tov, I believe, was the first one to mention this, but it may go back further than that, one of the early commentators. He says, you'll learn something unbelievable. The verse is telling you that God created the heavens and the earth using the letters Aleph through Taf. How did God create the world? He used the Hebrew letters. They are the code by which this world was created. Which means everything in this world can be broken down into letters. It is the DNA that binds all things and all people, specifically the Hebrew letters. Let me explain some more, because that may sound a little bit out there, but I'm going to make it very, very clear to you. And actually, we have something very handy nowadays called a computer. And computers can reveal to us a lot, because basically all computers are strings of code. Let me give you a better example. Anyone see the movie The Matrix? Right, I saw the first one. I didn't see the second or third, but I saw the first one. I don't go into the whole second trilogy thing. At that point, they're just making money, right? But the first one I did see. And actually, that's a pretty accurate description of how the Kabbalists, mystical Judaism, sees the world. Remember those green letters coming down? Right? Everything looks real, and they bind the world together. I don't know if those boys attended Jewish day school, but they will write up to a point. The Hebrew letters create the thing. Now, we're going to take this to the next phase. I need you to focus. Open up. You'll learn something good. In order to understand anything, we need to look at the Hebrew word that describes it, because the word is the thing. Let me explain what I mean by that. The word for a word in Hebrew is a davar. Daled bet resh. Davar. Now, the Hebrew word for an object or a thing is also a davar. It's the same letters. It's weird, isn't it? So the Hebrew word for a word and the Hebrew word for an object have the same letters that describe it. Different vowels, but the same. How could that be? Why would that be? Because the word is the thing. Let me explain. This is a table, right? What came first? The first ever table or the word table? It's a deep discussion for Tuesday night, I know that. But the chicken was good. What came first? The first ever table or the word table? The object or the word? The object. The object came first, right? First of all, someone put together 4 posts, put something on top, called it a tablet, became a tablet, became a table, I don't know, whatever it was, okay? Some way, go back to Latin or whatever it was originally, fine. In Hebrew, in Judaism, we see the exact opposite. First came the word, then came the thing. God created the world using speech, which is why speech is so important for us Jews. God actually spoke the world into existence. So if you understand what anything is, an idea or an object, trace the thing back to its original word, analyze that word, and it will reveal to you what that thing is. That means encoded in Hebrew, which does not exist in any other language, is the essence of the object. You know, English is very descriptive, and French is romantic, and German is harsh, but Hebrew is spiritual. That is the language that creates the world. Let's do some examples. Let's have some fun. What's the Hebrew word for a dog? Anybody know? Kelev. Kelev. That's actually 2 words put together. Kol lev, all heart. Man's best friend. Dogs are incredible, right? In other words, they don't really do much for us. Don't get upset if you're a dog owner. Dog owners get really upset. You can insult a dog owner's parents, grandparents, and whatever you are, hair, they don't care. Don't mess with a dog. So let me finish off the point. Dogs are loved by everyone. Why would that be? Right? The cow gives us its meat, gives us its skin. Right? The sheep gives us its wool and gives us milk and cheese, you know, and the goats. And all these animals are stuck in the barn. And the dog, he's inside. He's yapping away. He gets to eat from the table, sleep in the bed. Oh, my little doggy, I love you. I feel like, oh, my little bougie. Right? Why? Why do we love it? Because dogs are the essence of love. They are kolev, they're all heart. They are the most loyal creatures. How do I know that? The Word is revealing it to me. The Word has revealed it to me. The Word is telling me the essence of what the dog is. First came the word, then came the Hebrew word for a face is a panim. A panim. So the word panim actually is related to the word pinim, which means inside. How do I know how somebody is doing? Do I look at their hand, their knee, their foot? I look at their face. If you walked in this evening and you saw me and I'm like, you know I'm sad. If you walked in, I was like, you know I'm happy. My face, my panim reveals my pinim. My panim reveals my pinim. So it's the same word, different vowels, but they both actually mean exactly the same thing. One reveals the other. How do I know? Hebrew word is telling me. You met those people before, right? Who are like really, really good looking. Like absolutely beautiful guy or a girl. And then you get to know their pinim, and they're not such nice people. And actually they become ugly. They actually become like not good looking. Like, wow, how did I ever find them good looking? Because their panim has now shown itself through the face. Or the other way around. You look at someone like, oh my God, they are ugly. Oh my God, I can't even look at him. Look at her, put a bag on it. Oh my goodness. And then you get to know their panim, and they're such nice people that actually their face changes. They actually become good looking. Isn't that amazing? My wife says when she first met me, okay, never mind. So the word is revealing it to me. It's going to work in every single case. A Hebrew word for scales, moznaim, one of the older words for scales. The root is ozen, which means ear. Why are scales an ear? Because your inner balance is in your ear, right? Right? The word has been known for thousands of years. The word is revealing the essence. This is also going to work with your Hebrew name. Hebrew names are very important. The Hebrew word for a soul is a neshama. A neshama. The root of the word neshama is shame, which means name. It reveals your essence. It's like a barcode. You know, you get those like products, like the plastics, whatever, and it's got a little barcode on it. And it's just like a series of lines. And then you pass it over the red light and it goes blip, and up on the screen comes all the information. How did I get it? It was all encoded in those lines. That's your Hebrew name. You have to be very careful about the Hebrew name you choose. Some people have good Hebrew names and some people actually don't have such good Hebrew names. How? You have to speak to a professional. Not for now. I can guide you in that way. But the Hebrew name you choose for yourself, or in most cases chosen for you by your parents, which usually come from a previous generation, and I've had the experience of many people tell me, I'm named after a grandmother, and they say I'm very much like her, or a great-grandmother, that the soul comes back down again, and the name itself is somehow representative of the person's soul. So your Hebrew name reveals your essence as well, and possibly your mission in life. But that's another discussion, not for now. We'll do a class just on names. But the important point is, that's what Hebrew can reveal to us. Okay, we've done left field. Let's come back. What are we discussing? Love. So how am I going to define love? Look at the Hebrew word. Simple as that. Right? If I look at the Hebrew word itself, something's going to be revealed to me. And we Jews, we're going to see, are fascinated with this idea of love. But we have a system. God wouldn't just give us the desire for love without helping us fulfill it and create it. And the equation's got to be simple. So the Hebrew word for love is ahava. Ahava. Not just a cream. Not the cream these Israelis are selling in all the malls through America, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. In the middle there, it's like, come, I put ahava on your hands. Like, thank you. Keep your ahava to yourself, please. Uri and Golda. So the word, before it was a cream, it was an idea. And the word ahava actually has a root. Every Hebrew word has a root called a shoresh. Shoresh means a root. And the root of the word ahava is hav. Hav. And that means to give. That means the root essence of any love relationship, whether it be love between boyfriends, girlfriends, married couples, brothers, sisters, employees, companies, my love for my job, is all about giving. It's very free. We use that word a lot, by the way, you know. And we misuse it. We misuse it. It's a famous story of someone who said, you know, what do you love? And they said, I love fish. You love fish? He goes, yeah, I love fish. He goes, why do you love fish? Thursday night, fish night, delicious. It's like, you don't love fish. He goes, I do. You don't love fish. I said I love fish. He goes, you know, if you love fish, you wouldn't catch it, kill it, gut it, skin it, cover in your favorite herbs and spices, and stick it in the oven 350 for half an hour. Hope you don't love your wife like that. That's not love. What you're saying is you love yourself. You love what fish feels for you. That's not the Jewish definition of love. You can enjoy fish. You can eat fish all you want. Omega-3 fatty acids. We're good with that. On Shabbat, actually, it's a mitzvah to eat fish 3 times over Shabbat. But that's not what love is. Love is hav, which means to give. Now, don't make the mistake that most people make, and that is if I give somebody something, they're going to love me. Now, that we know is complete nonsense. So at this stage of life, you should realize that. Right? If I tell you this child, and his parents give whatever he wants. He wants to go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning? No problem. Don't want to do your homework? No problem. You want to have dinner at 1 a.m. and you want chocolate and candy? No problem. Is that a good parent? It's a very giving parent. Whatever the child wants to give. What have you done to that child? You killed the kid. Destroyed them, crushed them. Take their school fund and put it to therapy. Why? Because the child took. You see, what causes the love is the giving. If you give somebody something, you will love them. It's as simple as that. How do you love someone? By giving them. That's why one of the great Jewish commentators, Dessler, that writes about this in a great book called Strive for Truth, that's the English version, he says that's why a mother loves the child more than the child loves the mother. Because the child takes and the mother just gives. It's the essence. Maybe that's why women have to remain pregnant for 9 months before they can deliver a baby. Right? They've given 9 months of their life. Very difficult, challenging, sleepless, painful. I know on TV everyone's so happy, rolling around. No, I've never been pregnant myself, but I've had a wife who's been pregnant, thank God, a number of times. Yes, fairly unpleasant. It's very difficult lying there with this big thing like that. You give, when the baby comes out, you really love that child. Okay? If you want to love a company, you want to love a course, love something, you give to it, the more you love it. But be careful who you give to. You're not expected to give to everyone all the time. Because if you just give, and they take, that builds resentment. So we Jews don't walk around like, come, I love everyone, give me a hug and a kiss. I'm not saying personally. Give me a hug and a kiss. Oh, come. Know who, when, why, where, and how. Once you answer those questions, then you can talk about a healthy, loving relationship. And we all want to have healthy, loving relationships, no matter what area of our life, with our family, friends, wherever. Okay. You know, we talk about different levels over here. These aren't different levels, by the way. What we're describing are different galaxies, different stratospheres of existence. We're not going from like 5 to 4. 5 and 4 are completely different. 5 is physical. I'll prove it to you. Let's pick on someone. Let's pick on you, Luba. Luba, do you one day want to get married? Would you like children one day, God willing? Okay. Imagine you get married and you have a baby girl. Oh, they're so cute, girls. I have a few of them. So I come to your door and you just gave birth, and I knock on the door, and I'm like, Luba Mazeltov, what a beautiful baby, which is an insult, actually, because all babies look like E.T. when they're first born. You realize that? So when someone says, you look just like your baby, that's not nice. Anyway, so I walk in, I'm like, Luba, I'd like to make you an offer. I'd like to buy your baby from you. I'm being serious, $50. No? I'll take absolute care of her. Best education, love, family, whatever you want, she's going to have. But you're never going to see her again. $100? 500? No? 1,000? 10,000? 1,000,000? 5 million? But this is why I always ask a woman, not a guy. Because when I ask guys, I hit 5 million, they're like, we can have more. So I always ask a woman rather than a guy about this one. So, of course you wouldn't. It's crazy. Rabbi, I would never, ever, don't worry about it. I would never, ever sell my child for. Do you know how much physical pleasure you can buy with $5 billion? Okay, don't think about it, by the way. You'll be here, everyone starts to get too excited. It's a lot of physical pleasure. But you wouldn't take all of level 5. All of it. In all of it, for even a moment of level 4, which is love. Love for a child. It's an amazing thing. Now, can you have counterfeit love? Remember the counterfeit? Oh, absolutely. You've spoken about that already, right? And on being in counterfeit love relationships, they may not be love, they could be lust or fantasy or obsession, you know. There's always a counterfeit that goes with it. That's what you have to watch out for. Is it giving? And is it mutually giving? That's what you're looking for. You can give to something and end up hating it. Let's move up to the next level. Now we have our background. And the next 3 levels actually, we're getting to high places. It's going to be hard to really go deep into them because they kind of speak for themselves. But what comes after? Love. So what comes after love is meaning. Meaning. And meaning is something which everyone needs. Not everyone goes for, but they do need. There was a Holocaust survivor by the name of Viktor Frankl. And he came to America and started a psychiatric practice, because that's what he was before the war, and he was after the war. And he was here, I think he was on the Upper East Side, I believe. And as part of his practice, he started to deal with these women on the Upper East Side. And they would sit down and be like, what's wrong? They'd be like, I don't know, I'm depressed. And he'd be like, well, family? Was that okay? Health? That's pretty good. Make a living? Yeah, pretty well off. Then what's wrong? I'm depressed. And it was patient after patient. And before the war, he didn't find it was like this. But after the war, when he came to affluent America, he found it was like this. And then he realized, you know what these people are missing? Meaning. And they wrote a very famous book, Man's Search for Meaning. Became a big, big bestseller. It's actually a great book, worth reading. It's a short book, but it's a good one. Man's Search for Meaning. It's one of the big classics. And he says this is a natural desire. And you can have a lot of physical pleasure, and you can have a lot of love, and if you lack meaning, you're lacking a lot. We all see these great celebrities, physical pleasure, do they have it? They got so much money, they don't know what to do with it. Love, beautiful husbands and wives, gorgeous kids, and let you see them, and they're like, depressed, splitting up 1 minute, front page of the magazines. I don't buy these magazines, but you better check out at one of the supermarkets. There was a magazine that tempt you to buy, and on the front page they're always so happy, walking along the beach, holding hands with the gorgeous blonde children in tow. And the next week, the page is split, that split like Splitsville, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, whoa, see that? That's what walking on the beach does for you. That's a dangerous game to play. So it's terrible. And the answer is because they're lacking meaning. You can have a lot of physical love, but if you're lacking meaning, you are lacking everything. And we Jews put a lot of emphasis in finding meaning in our lives. There is a purpose to life. There is no coincidence. Everything happens for a reason, and meaning can be taken from anywhere and everywhere. Okay? By the way, what's the counterfeit of meaning? Got to be a counterfeit. Remember that? So there are some meanings which seem good, but they're not so good. We're going to talk about Abraham in one of our classes, but we're going to mention him right now. Abraham was considered to be the first Jew. Actually, he wasn't Jewish, but that's another discussion, not for now. But one thing which he did was he brought a great amount of meaning to the world. And he used a certain mechanism called chesed, through kindness towards other people, realizing there's a purpose to the world, there's a creator, and there's a reason why we're here in this world. There is no coincidence. But he was also against things. He was against, anyone know what his main thing was? People killing themselves for God. You see, when people used to worship idols in those days, and idols was a big business back then, one of the ways to do it was to sacrifice their children or themselves for God. And Abraham spent his entire life saying one thing: don't kill yourself for God. Live for God. We love life. It's easy to die for God. You just go and you blow yourself up. But that's not what God wants. God wants us to live. And Judaism, we love life. I mean that seriously and literally, every second of it. You can break pretty much every law in the entire Torah in order to save the life of another person, even for a second. Life is precious, precious to us. By the way, this idea of killing yourself for God still exists. Abraham's message still has to be spoken about. People still want to blow themselves up, fly themselves into buildings. That's not spirituality according to Judaism. We separate them, which is why in most cases you'll see the synagogue has the cemetery on the edge of town, two different places. And in other religions, you have the church surrounded by the cemetery, right? And images of death that are connected to it. We're not a death religion, we're a life religion. I'm going to show that to you quite specifically a little bit later when we discuss the mitzvah. So there are bad meanings out there. It's not all good. And we Jews have become very unpopular sometimes, saying things to people who are like, no, it's all okay. We're like, no, it's not okay. Right? I know Jews, people, it's all, we accept everything. We don't accept everything. Sometimes you've got to put a line in the sand and say, that's not what we do. That's not okay. And by the way, that helps us understand the 10th test of Abraham, which was to kill his own son. By the way, did Abraham kill his own son? He was told to do it, though. He was actually told to bind his son, actually, if you want to be specific. And then he went to a mountain, which ended up being the mountain in Jerusalem, Mount Moriah, right? And he stood there, and he was told not to kill his son. So the test was still there, to go against his own logic. Something he'd actually spoken about his entire life not to do. He was now told to do it. That's why it was such a test. But then God said, don't kill him. How do you inform a world not to do something? You say, this is what we don't do. So it was the living example, the living epitome of this idea of the love and preciousness of life. So some of the isms out there, which we Jews have sometimes been captivated by and sometimes created or been persecuted by, they're just not right. They're just not right. So that's the counterfeit. Okay, so that's meaning. What's better than meaning? 2 more to go, we're nearly finished. What's after meaning? So after meaning, I wouldn't have got this either, is creativity. You see, you can have meaning in your life. You could be a soldier, be a Marine, right? And you're fighting for your country, and you're willing to give it your identity and your physical pleasures to train, and to give your clothing, and you become a number. You have a lot of meaning. Do you know who's got greater pleasure than that? Is the general who creates the battle. You've got a building. The builder builds the building. He gets great pleasure when he stands back and looks at the end result. But who has the most pleasure? The architect, right? Who has the plan, the vision, and then it comes up. It's a different form of pleasure. It's much greater. The greatest point of a person's life that I know of, and the greatest pleasure almost, I think as well, is the birth of a child. There is no greater high. You create. We have been given the ability to create life. That's an amazing thing. And no matter how many times you go through that process, it's always like the first time. It's unbelievable. Creating life, becoming a partner with God in creating life is one of the greatest things that can exist. So creation for us, that we're able to create, ideas, thoughts, processes, can go much, much higher. Okay? By the way, is there a counterfeit creation? And yeah, people create bad things. People enjoy creating chaos and misery. Right? You can have a crazy dictator that enjoys creating havoc. They get pleasure out of that. It's sick, twisted, it's counterfeit, but for them it's real. They enjoy killing millions of people. They enjoy creating computer programs that send spam right throughout the world that can blow up computers. They enjoy that. It's sick and twisted, but it's a pleasure, and it is creative. What's higher than that? Says the Chinuch, the greatest pleasure a person can feel is connecting with God. Spiritual pleasure, if you will. Feeling a closeness to God, to the purpose, to the essence of all creation. It could be a fleeting moment, but that's a great, great feeling. I want to take you to the mitzvah where all of these things can be found. And all of you know of this mitzvah, but you never actually verbalize it. It's on page 973 in your stone chumashim. But I've got to read it in the Hebrew. So you can look at the bottom of page 972 and you can follow in the English. Verse 4. And this is the mitzvah that is called the Shema. The Shema. Anyone heard that word before? Sure. The Shema means to listen, to hear. It is the holiest prayer in Judaism. We are commanded to say it twice a day. It's the first words a child is taught. It's the last words a person says before they die. In it are all really the principles deep inside these words. And what would you think the greatest prayer, the greatest words would be? And it says, Shema Yisrael. Hear, listen, Israel, it's the Jewish people. Hashem Elokeinu, I am the Lord your God. Hashem Echad, I am one. Right? And then it says, what would be a good follow-up to that? Don't forget to give charity, fast on Yom Kippur. It's like the prayer. No, V'ahavta. You should love et Hashem Elokech, the Lord your God, b'chol levavacha, with all your heart, uv'chol nafshecha, all your soul, uv'chol ma'odecha, and all your might, which actually means your physical resources. There, says the Chinuch, are our 5 pleasures. We have God, we have love, we have physicality, we have creation, and we have meaning. It's all there. And that is our Jewish national anthem. We say it every morning when we wake up. We say the last thing we say when we go to sleep. It resonates in our lives, and we sing it, and we say it, and we talk about it. And this is really the essence of who we are as a people, the Shema prayer. And when we say it, have you seen someone say it before? They cover their eyes. Have you seen someone do that? Shema like that? Why would they cover their eyes? There's many answers to that question. One answer is we concentrate better. When we look at things, especially in synagogue, like who's wearing what, right? Then we get distracted. But I heard one of the great commentators say a beautiful thing about the reason we cover our eyes. When we say, there's no other time we cover our eyes. But when we say this prayer, this first line, we cover our eyes. Because when you have your eyes open, you can see far. When you half close them, you can see further. But when you have them closed completely, you have vision to see things which are much, much further away. And that is the mitzvah of the day, the Shema, one of the 613 commandments. Inside it, all the principles, deep in those words. And you can have a look in your own time at the commentaries at the bottom that discuss this tremendous mitzvah of the Shema and what it represents to us as a people. I want, if you don't mind, if I can find the page, which I hope I can, to take you to one final verse in our Chumash. And if you don't mind, to turn to page 1093. This is something I actually wanted to mention last week, but I kind of wanted to leave it to this week. And I think it applies to everyone who is here and to everyone. Where are we in the Torah? So remember, the Torah is taking us from the beginning of creation, from Adam and Eve, all the way through to the Jewish people about to enter into the land of Israel. That is a 2,488-year gap. The Jewish people left Egypt in the Jewish year 2448. We entered Israel 40 years later. That's 2488, 1313 BCE. Okay? Before the Jewish people enter, Moses, we're going to see in a couple of weeks, was forbidden to enter into the land of Israel. Why? We're going to talk about character traits. Something happened. Moses was not allowed to move, which, by the way, was a devastating thing for him. Devastating. His whole reason for getting the Jews out of Egypt was to get into Israel. But we'll leave that aside. Before he died, he gave a 3-week speech. Can you imagine that? I mean, they got to sleep in between and eat. But it was actually a 3-week. And those are his parting words. That's pretty much the last book of the entire Torah, is Moses' parting words to the Jewish people. And when he talks to them, he's talking to us. Because this Torah isn't just for them, it's for their descendants, which is us. And he says at the top of page 1093, for this commandment, ha-mitzvah zot, this mitzvah, that I command you today, it is not hidden from you, and it is not distant. The Torah is not inaccessible. It is not in heaven for you to say, who can ascend to the heaven for us and take it for us, so that we can listen to it and we can perform it. Nor, says Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, is it across the sea for you to say, who can cross to the other side of the sea for us and take it for us, so that we can listen to it and perform it. And then he says beautifully, rather, the matter is very near to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart to perform it. What do those words mean? So, one thing we can see clearly is this idea of mitzvah is not far. It is not some weird academic study which is in the heavens in some spiritual world that only the greatest rabbi or the greatest guru can reach. And is not distant. You don't have to travel to France to study in the Sorbonne, or you don't have to study in Oxford or Cambridge in order to get it, because only the select few will understand it. It's not string theory in physics. It's open to every single person at their level. It's so close, it's actually in your mouth. And it's in your heart, but you've got to perform it. You've got to do something about it. And that is mitzvah, which is our topic of all of our course. And that is mitzvah. It's near to us. And Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to me, and he's speaking to you, and he's speaking to you, and he's speaking to you, and 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 you. And all of you. That this mitzvah is yours. And don't let people say, that's not for you. That's for the elite. The rabbis do that. People say that. Right? Well, I don't do that. I'm not a rabbi. This religion wasn't given to rabbis. It was given to 3 million men, women, and children. Unlike any other religion, by the way. Every other religion, that's always given to one man. Or maybe 2 if you get lucky. Right? It's yours. And it should be recognizable to you. It should be constantly in your mouth and in your heart in order to perform it. Those are the words I wanted to leave you with. We're going to stop over there.